to the viewing audience out there. We have a very interesting session with the poets speak, and we're fortunate to have with us Cheryl Nerda and Bob Lee, Robert Lee, both poets in residence in the Missoula schools. John Meyer is accompanying us, and John is with Missoula Public Radio. Our entire panel here has, I think, a special interest in literature and particularly poetry. The subject today, I'll try to paraphrase it as best I can. What is the power of poetry? Can art influence public opinion? What ideas do poets have about this community? Can lyric expression enliven our vision to get St. Francis Xavier School serving children and community again? But that's the broad thrust of this, because we are the Xavier Foundation. But the specifics of this evening's discussion have more to do with what can poems do, and how can they, poems and lyric expression, even song verses, and of course lyrical art forms, the Statue of Liberty. What can they do to influence public opinion? What can they do to enliven our spirits and give us, what would you say, the courage to live yet another day? So here we are, and I'm going to pass this I'm going to pass the mic on to Cheryl, to start this off. Cheryl has a lot of experience with children and teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Excuse me. Well, here we are sitting in a room with no audience, but we are being filmed on MCAT, so we have a guarantee that we will be heard. But this does bring me to the point of, does poetry matter? Does it only matter to poets? And my answer is, of course, from William Carlos Williams, who said, it is hard to find the news in poetry, but every day men die for lack of reading it. So, I'm Cheryl Nothi, this is Robert Lee. We both work in the Missoula Writing Collaborative, and we bring poetry and prose into the lives and classes of school children so that we can teach them the fervent love that we have for writing, which is not easily done by the school curriculum. They have so much else to cover, but we can bring in an example of a living, breathing, surviving poet who will frequently have a story about how poetry not only changed but saved their life. When I was in 5th grade, my family was not literate and not very civilized either. And so I had a 5th grade poetry teacher who on Fridays gave us free rein to write poetry and stories. And those Fridays brought this balloon from my heart to my chest that expanded. And I discovered a place, which is literature, coming from myself, where I could redefine my life. And so rather than being a snaggletooth, poor girl with a bad wardrobe and an unhappy home life, a 5th grade teacher who encouraged me to write and wrote excellent in red across the top of all of my stories gave me the power to rewrite my life. And I was no longer an outsider or a lost child. I was a writer, and I was someone. She gave me those tools. The purpose of the Missoula Writing Collaborative is to continue with that mission and give children the tools to join the dialogue that is literature. This dialogue goes across the ages and unfortunately has largely excluded most people, leaving them feeling that poetry does not belong to them, is not a part of their lives, that literature is not particularly important in their lives, and that most of it is obscure, difficult, a luxury, and belongs in the university. Well, when this teacher continued to write excellent across my paper, she would have me rewrite my poems in ink, and we would send them off to Stone Soup and to all of the highlights and all the children's magazines, and I was soundly rejected by those magazines all year, which is a great preparation for the life of a writer. You do not let public consensus or the marketplace tell you what is good and what is right. Those values that have kept you alive, allowed you to recreate your life and to survive, those values are intact. Children are not afraid of poetry, and children are our civilization. The children coming up today are going to be the most important people because they are the people that are at the tide of the lip of civilization and whose work it is to make peace and to make peace with the earth and each other. And I find that when children write poetry, they're open and honest. They don't censor themselves because poetry doesn't allow for censorship. We encourage that in the classroom. The children find a place inside themselves where their deepest thoughts and feelings reside, and they bring it out in a manner that is fresh and completely new. And they also find poetry is a way to make sense of their lives. When they express frustration and anger in their poems, this allows them to air these feelings in a positive and safe situation, and not only are they rewarded by the cheers and support of their peers, but they have less need to act out. If you can put your anger into words, or better, into art, and then receive accolades for it, you're much less likely to steal a car or to endanger the self that you are cultivating. It sublimates those feelings and teaches the children how to use their voice and their imagination as problem solving. It also gives them creative alternatives to pick from in their life so that they're not doomed to a job they hate or, held down to 3 choices. They can open up their thinking because they've accessed their imagination, and they can make better choices.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cheryl. Those are, I think, some very cogent thoughts and very germane to our topic, because we do, the Xavier Foundation is very interested in a building built for children expressly at school. St. Francis Xavier School, a 30,000 square foot school with an auditorium, a gymnasium, and hopefully a school that will have a long life. It's certainly got probably centuries built into it. It's a solidly built building. We're here because of a summer poetry contest. The prizes are $300, $200, and $100. There are 3. Those are the 3 prizes. We will have a judging in October. Our poetry contest is modeled somewhat after the idea that the poem "Old Ironsides" saved the battleship Constitution. We're here asking, can poetry and/or lyric expression, can song verses, for instance, can they convey sufficient emotion to spearhead a groundswell of support for, in this, a concept such as an existing building. Robert Lee is here with us. If the name sounds familiar, there are reasons. I won't belabor them.
Well, he's a published poet.
There
He's
you
a
are.
published author.
There you
He
are.
travels Idaho and Montana teaching poetry to children.
And that's enough. And the important thing, though, is that with Cheryl addressing the issue of the children, Robert is interested and has some thoughts for us about the aspect of poetry, lyric expression in relation to the structure of our society. Robert?
Well, thank you. I think poetry probably makes us uncomfortable in our own skin. And I think that that's the result and the purpose of poetry, and that it's good for us to be uncomfortable in our own skin. I like to think about it as we're walking. Say you get out of work and you're walking across the park. You're going to go do some grocery shopping and then go out to dinner. You're pretty complacent in your life, walking along. You've just got a raise. You're thinking, oh, I wonder what bottle of wine I should buy to go with dinner. And as you're walking along, all of a sudden a little pebble gets inside your shoe. And you don't have time to stop and mess with a little pebble in shoe, so you just kind of tap your shoe and get that pebble down between your toes to where it's not bothering you. And you keep walking. Well, eventually, we all know that that pebble's going to work its way back into the meat of your foot. And you're going to have to stop and do something about it. That pebble that now feels like a boulder inside rubbing against the sole of your foot. And I think as we expose ourselves to poetry, the same thing happens, that we lose our complacency with the world, and we are touched by things that we would maybe just as soon ignore. And pretty soon we're stopping to do something because we become aware of our sole of your foot, or
That's good.
and
That is worth at least a chuckle.
so when Cheryl called me and asked me if I would discuss the role of poetry in society, I spent several days pondering it as poets do, and I remembered a poem that I had written years back when some friends of mine at the museum, at the University of Montana, were doing a art show, and they asked me to write a poem to hang in their art show. So this is a poem that was never published, but it's hung in an art show, and it's called Fair Warning. And the idea of this poem is that it should be posted on the doors of libraries, museums, art galleries, and probably schools. Be warned, you enter a world where artists stand naked, expose their private thoughts to public scrutiny and scorn. They'll undress you too, pop proud buttons, peel protective shells, strip away complacency. Their art will envelop you, enfold your flesh, squeeze your breath from you, inflame your loins. Your ass was safer in your lazy boy. Poets don't sit silent on sodomy. Here, your sister's secret screams at you. Wolves howl in your backyard. Hungry children tear at your new clothes. You are in prison, insane, impotent. You now know someone who has died of AIDS. There is God doing a striptease. Da-ta-ta. What will be revealed? Her in her ebony beauty, him pockmarked and scarred, one angry eye. You don't get to choose. The artist stands naked, you are the voyeur. The poet gives voice, you are all ears. You can't turn down the volume. You can walk away, the door opens both ways, but be warned, art clings to fabric. You stand before a smorgasbord, art, temptations for all taste, foods that leave you hungry, wines which enrage thirst. No one will count your calories or say you've had enough. You'll stand alone among multitudes, trying to guess your own weight.
Thank you very much,
Nice.
Robert. I like that. I placed myself right there in the art gallery with what was happening and with this on the wall. And it had the ability to really take me right there. And what you say is so true about art can literally undress us and make us feel naked if we let it, and perhaps that's what it's supposed to do. Cheryl?
Well, I would like to interject that I would like to repeat the William Carlos Williams poem because
Would
I
you? Yes.
did not do it correctly the first time. You cannot find the news in poetry, but every day men die for the lack of what is found there. I also wanted to add that the artist is déclassé. The artist is not white collar. The artist is not judged by socioeconomic conditions or where their parents came from or what they did. And thus, children who have art in their lives are not disenfranchised by socioeconomics. Rather, they have a voice and a stake in the ongoing process of civilization. They learn to listen, they learn to accept constructive criticism, and they come to realize that their contribution to culture is essential, that they are a vibrant part of the dialogue that is literature over the ages.
That is, what you've described then is, as you say, déclassé. It takes you away from all aspects, race, gender,
Yes.
Socioeconomics. You are as it were, a free spirit. So in essence, you have stepped for a moment when you're immersed in art. You have, whether that art be poetry or literature, or it be painting or sculpture, or any other number of arts, dance, music, you have stepped into a realm of the free spirit, and that's very interesting because that is the ideal, that's the goal of so many faiths in the world, that you somehow survive this world in such a way that you somehow earn heaven. And heaven, you've just described it, is perhaps being in an art gallery with a poem in front of you, like Robert's, and some great art. It's a form of heaven on earth.
Yes.
And it's so interesting, that's an interesting thing about that, and I don't know how many of everybody in this room has had a chance to see St. Francis Xavier Church with its 100-year-old paintings. And it's so interesting that those churches of that era, great effort was put into them, and it's particularly true of the Byzantine art. And of course, Brother was from Turin, Italy, so not that far from Byzantium, you might say, not that far from Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. But the Orthodox churches especially, but even the Roman churches for sure, of Italy, and in this case, Missoula, Montana, they were to take you into another realm. When you stepped into that church, you were to be transported for that moment from you might say, the grunge of everyday life, the dirt roads that they had then, to step into a small paradise, and give you at least a moment of respite, for your soul.
Yes.
So that's a great observation, Cheryl, and thank you. I've mentioned music a couple times, and I do have a National Public Radio announcer with us. He's with us, and he's at KUFM. Very frequently, late into the night, you will hear the voice of John Myers. John has a master's degree in English, and it, of course, I still tell our foreign exchange students, I've been working at mastering English, and I really never have. So don't be disappointed. John?
It's a lifetime to start. I'm here, I guess, mostly to, and I'm, of course, one who knows poetry. I'm here to encourage people to submit poems to this contest that the Xavier Foundation is, this contest that they're putting on. And so people who are listening know that they can
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Is the microphone on now? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I'm here to encourage people to submit poems to the summer poetry contest that the Xavier Foundation is putting on, and they're asking people to write poems about the school itself, its history, its personal effect on the writer, and the possible future of the school. And somewhere here, there's the...
That's good. John, I'm just going to mention that, and I don't know if the camera will follow me, but as you speak, I will try to show the camera these images so that people can capture the ideas. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful old building, not very far from where we're sitting right now, and a bunch of people in the community are attempting to save that building so it can be used for any one of a number of things, including possibly its use again as a school or perhaps as a daycare facility. A lot of possible different uses, and this poetry contest is one of the efforts by a number of people to get the public's attention and to arouse interest in preserving the building. So if anyone out there is interested in submitting a poem, you can send it to the Xavier Foundation, Post Office Box 7631, Missoula, Montana 59807. And to repeat things on the radio, I'll say the Xavier Foundation, Post Office Box 7361, Missoula, Montana 59807. The first prize is $300, the second prize $200, and the third $100. And since my real interest in life is popular music along with literature, and unfortunately, since I'm not a musician, I brought in a tape of a recording of a song about memories of childhood and the old school on the hill, and I just managed to locate a verse from a Robert Bly poem that I really like that is also brought to mind by the attempt to save the school and by the song I'm about to play, that by saving the school, people can also preserve sort of a physical reference for their memories and for the memories of the whole community and the history of Missoula in this area. So I think this song and the school itself can help preserve what Robert Bly refers to as all those disappeared children who went around with us on the rings at grade school. Something for the people who went to the school there to Xavier to hold on to, something to help evoke their memories. So I thought I would play this one short song performed by Doc Watson. It's written by a man named Alfred Carnes about childhood and
Thank you,
the old
John.
school.
Well, as you start that, I will also hold up, I'll take turns holding up the images then of the, in this case, the school, in this case, the rest of the campus. And the image behind Alice is, and I'll hold it up later and you'll be able to see it better, is the actual, the layout of the campus. And then, so that while you're starting it, and then this is very interesting because this year's Montana basketball photo for the men's team was taken in that gym. So go ahead and start, and I'll just hold
Okay.
this for the audience. So
And again, I hope this is an inspiration for people who are thinking of writing a poem. Anyone can write a poem, and this is a good subject. Sometimes you need some specific direction. You know, you don't know what to write a poem about. We're suggesting a topic, so and this song might be a little bit of an inspiration.
to the days of my childhood play. Could I only find those days as they were then, the golden days to live all over again, my path would not be empty, I'd make a mark in life, my mother so happy, and her hair not near so white, if I could only find the way back to the days of my childhood play. Could I only find the days as they were seen, and childish joys not speed away like dreams, the schoolhouse on the hilltop and the meadows all in bloom, the bird's song in the willow and not a world so full of gloom, if I could only find the way back to the days of my childhood play.
If I had only known, Robert and I would have danced.
Thank you, John Myers. We appreciate your finding that song, possibly in the depths of the National Public Radio Archives at KUFM in Missoula, but right here in our town. But I do appreciate that, and it brings up a point, and that is that song verses are poetry. And song verses are a way you can make money with poetry. And
Money with poetry. I've never heard
Cheryl,
of it.
it's true, Cheryl. Now, I was trying to hide it from you
What
so
have I
you,
missed
so
out?
you could stay a poor, unpaid poet, but truly, you can make money with poetry. Well, you tell us about that. You've sold poems, I know you have.
Yes, they're going for about $30.
Well,
And, but I didn't go
is
in.
that, how about the longer poems? Is it by the
$30
verse?
is pretty
Oh,
much.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't go into poetry to be a banker. I went into poetry to save my own skin. Because if you don't take what is inside of you and bring it out, it'll kill you. I would like to, for example, read you a few children's poems.
From your own students?
Yes.
If you do, and have the ages of the poet, that would be appreciated.
Yes.
Yes, by all means.
This is a poem by a girl named Jessica. She wrote it when she was in 4th grade, and she was in the resource room, which means she had problems with reading and writing, and she was in my class, and I've always known that it is the children who are not achieving in geometry or science, who are sometimes sitting with their desk facing the wall or beside the teacher because they won't be quiet, because they have so much inside of them and they don't know how to direct it. And so those children are usually the best poets. So here's an example. The sea is full of words like, the dog is good, and the wind talks to me. Why don't you like the sun? It has huge waves that are mad, like you are not good, and I hate your haircut. There is a desert. The wind is thirsty for wetter water. The sky is full of words. The sky is full of white words like, you are so white and I so dark. You are so beautiful, like the sun in the sky. Your face glows in the darkness like the moon in the sky.
And that was a 4th grader.
That was a 4th grader who had a lot of trouble with reading and writing, and thus was very reluctant to take part in reading and writing activities. Then she had a chance, because in poetry class, we don't care about spelling, grammar, or punctuation. We find that if you get a child interested in writing poetry, that child will read more, and from the context of reading, will learn spelling and grammar outside of what is taught in the classroom.
But it starts with writing, gets the interest in reading. And then
Yes, frequently,
And then
yes.
it's you might say a cycle, a circular, a self-fulfilling and self-improving process.
Yes. I would also like to read you a very brief poem. Yelling that word that I hate. The screaming and shouting is driving me crazy. I hate yelling. My parents always yell, and I don't mean to, but I get so frustrated. I don't know why my mom and dad yell at each other. It makes me feel like I don't exist, and maybe I don't to you. I love you, Mom and Dad. Please stop yelling.
Says it all, Cheryl. Kind of brings tears, actually. To all of us, because we're all been through some of those things. And I can tell you that in our contest, the thing that kind of inspired this, and I won't read the whole poem, but it's the story of Old Ironsides, that Oliver Wendell Holmes was a college student. And this is a contest sponsored by the Xavier Foundation. We do have a website, folks, and we will be seen. You're watching us on MCAT today, and you will see us again on Wednesday. We'll be available again on Wednesday if you're interested in watching. The station can give you the program time. I kind of think it's 2 to 3 in the afternoon, especially if the show you're watching now is Tuesday evening. The other one will be 2 to 3 in the afternoon. The two times I know are 9 to 10 and 2 to 3, that much. And so the website, www.xavierfoundation.net, it's loaded with information, various newspaper articles, uplinks to all manner of sites. And Old Ironsides, Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., there were two of them. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. was a student in college and found out that it looked like they were going to turn the battleship Constitution, it's a tall-masted ship, into basically matchwood. And he kind of sprang to the rescue with this poem, Old Ironsides. I tear her tattered ensign down, long has it waved on high. And many an eye has danced to see that banner in the sky. Beneath it rang the battle shout, and burst the cannon's roar. The meteor of the ocean air shall sweep the clouds no more. Her deck once red with heroes' blood, where knelt the vanquished foe, when winds were hurrying o'er the flood and waves were white below. No more shall feel the victor's tread, or know the conquered knee. The harpies of the shore shall pluck the eagle of the sea. Oh, better that her shattered hulk should sink beneath the wave. Her thunders shook the mighty deep, and there should be her grave. Nail to the mast her holy flag, set every threadbare sail, and give her to the god of storms, the lightning and the gale. Excuse the emotion, but that's what the emotion in that poem was captured by storm, the country. It was published, I believe, in the Boston Advertiser, and that poem saved the ship. And today we can go on board that ship. When we're in Boston, we can board that ship, and it's a great experience. I've been privileged to do it. The guns are there, the decks. I felt like it was as big as a football field. I was amazed at the size of it, and it was credited in the recent movie Master and Commander. So, yes, poetry, art, literature. Isaac Stern got on board with the movement to save Carnegie Hall in New York, and so we still have Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall, I suspect, I'm not sure, but I think it might almost be twice the age of this 75-year-old building that we're working on here, this St. Francis Xavier School. We have additional members with us, and I think everybody has something to say. Alice Spritz is with us. I can only tell you that she's a wonderful reader when it comes to Ulysses. I got to hear her read a chapter from Ulysses last night. It was a great privilege. Alice?
Oh, thank you. Wow. I mean, I didn't quite know what this was, and so I feel sort of ill-equipped to speak, but I'm.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
kind of what part can poetry play in our lives, and how can it change things? And not just poetry, but song, verses, and literature, various literary.
I think.
How about Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses?
Well, just writing in general, I think is vital for the soul. And I did some work with a program with kids where they did all kinds of exercises in the various arts, and then they create their own show using all the, they paint murals and write poetry and write.
Was that in an, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but was that in an area of L.A.?
Yeah. And it was.
Uptown, downtown?
Well, it was all at different schools, but in rough areas. It tended to be for kids at risk. And, I mean, it was remarkable. Am I?
Trying to get you.
Oh, hello?
There we are, I'm sorry.
Just the growth in these kids that, even some kids like with special needs that ended up playing leads in the shows, and just their confidence that developed and the storylines they'd come up with, and, the issues that they're dealing with, but having that outlet to express it creatively just made a tremendous
So you
impact.
have had experiences in a way similar to Cheryl's, in that you're seeing the effect of the arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. And
I have an example of one of those at-risk children in this poem that I would like to show you, because this child was always in the detention room. He was always in fisticuffs on the playground, and he was always in trouble. And so one day, I asked the children to free write. Whatever is on your mind, write for 10 minutes. And is it all right? May I?
We'd love to hear it.
Okay.
It's a few verses, and it's.
Oh, it's not long at all.
It's not long at all.
No.
But yet,
Long enough?
we can understand this young person a
Yes,
little
you
better.
will.
Okay.
Okay, this is the kid that's always in trouble for fighting on the playground, for disrupting the classroom.
Are you sure you're not describing me and Bob and John when we were kids?
No.
I didn't, excuse me. I'll
I'll write one for you guys. Why is it snowing? What am I thinking? The principal just came in and he said, I want you in my office. What am I doing here? How did the world start? Why did I wake up in my brother's dirty laundry? Why am I alive? Why does it have to be me that has to be getting glasses? Why don't I be the same as everyone else? Why am I a foster kid? Why didn't Mom be normal? Why were we so poor? Why does she like drugs? Why don't I live in a normal family? Why don't I have any friends? Why do I think of so many things? Why am I not like everyone else? Why is everyone smarter than me? Why don't I know my parents? Why don't Mom and Dad want me? They didn't. They didn't want us. Why don't I know how to swim? Why are my ear tubes being taken out? Why do I write so big? Is it snowing? These are things I am thinking of in my head. After I took this poem to the principal and to the counselor, the child was no longer in detention. The child was in counseling. 10 years later, I saw him in a car with his new foster family, and he was taller than me, and he was smiling and waving at me from the car. And I had a feeling that he was going to be all right.
So people can make a difference. as you said, a poem made a difference. I see a very wonderful person, Mary Ellen, dabbing her eyes down there. I will not call on her right this moment, but she was touched. And so was I. I'll admit it. I think, I don't know if the TV shows it, but I'm tearing up.
I used to cry every time I read it. I've been reading this poem for years, and this is one of the few times I didn't break down.
I'll tell you a little vignette, and it has to do with the Jesuit order. And it was my privilege to go to Madison and Calvert Streets in Baltimore a few months ago. And there I found a wonderful school. It's one of the nativity schools. Father Jack Pagliazzi operates the school, and he founded this network of Nativity Miguel schools. There's such a school as up at Browning. There's one over in Portland, St. Andrews in Portland. And these schools are founded for boys specifically, although I think you can have these kind of problems with girls. But boys are, I think, particularly hard to raise. Mary and my wife and I raised 2 boys and 2 girls. But they can be difficult to raise. And what they found with the kind of boy that you're describing was that and they're bouncing off the walls at school. They're bored.
Mm-hmm.
They're problem kids.
They haven't slept, they haven't had proper nutrition.
Yeah, everything. And they found that by bringing those kids into these, it happens to be Jesuit schools, I think other people are doing similar things, they brought them in, and they start them at 8 in the morning. I saw these boys there in that, it was an inner city school in Baltimore, and they recited the Our Father, as 7th graders, recited the Our Father in Latin for me. And they were proud of themselves. And they're not dumb. In fact, they're the opposite. They're so smart that they're problem kids. They do their geometry, they do their algebra. What's interesting about these nativity schools is that the biggest supporters, in other words, financially, are kids that would have been in reform school and jail, are now the financial support of the Nativity Network. There's 53 of them. They're called Nativity if they're Jesuit, and if they're Christian Brothers, they're Miguel. And there is a Miguel up at school up at Browning, Montana, and there is a nativity school over at Portland. So, yes, kids don't have to, some say it's our school or the reform school. We have a building here. Mary Ellen Campbell at the university paraphrased that, yeah, Yale or jail. So, and I've just used the word Mary Ellen again, and there she is. And you are experienced, you work with children in your work, Mary Ellen.
I do, and I think the arts are very important for them. That's all right. I also wasn't really prepared to say anything, but yeah, for some kids, it's the arts that brings the world alive before it hasn't been alive to them. And they haven't felt a part of it in the way that.
It's a good way of putting it.
It's such a way of reaching out. There's an interesting, what you just said about bringing the world alive. It's very interesting how it can work at both ends of life. And that is, there's a cancer outreach group who do make, they teach calligraphy, and then you write about your cancer experience. And many people at that point in life that have cancer are basically facing it alone, although, I don't know how much help another person can be with a battle like that. But they're basically facing it alone, a lot of times living in an apartment by themselves or something. And Yupa Stein has this.
Living Arts.
Okay, thank you.
That's the program,
Thank you,
yes.
And do you have some thoughts about that program? It's been, I think, there's been some tremendous stories come out of that.
One thing I'd like to interject, it's not precisely with that program, but one of the things that we tend to forget about poetry is that it's been going on for centuries and centuries, and people have been putting down their angst and their fears, and it could be argued that we all do this whole triple O. You mentioned die of cancer alone. We all eventually die alone. And that whole idea of living and dying is a lot of what poets talk about. I had a couple of quotes that I dug up when I was thinking about the role of poetry in society, and I'd like to read them to you. One's, men do not care how nobly they live, but only how long, although it is within the reach of every man to live nobly, but within no man's power to live long. And that was said by Lucius Annaeus Seneca, who lived from 4 BC to AD 65. He also said, and this is kind of the counterbalance to the old Ironsides, I guess, we are mad not only individually, but nationally. We check manslaughter and isolated murders, but what of war and the much vaunted crime of slaughtering whole peoples? So the same things that we're concerned with society today were concerns before Christ. And I find that both hopeful and disturbing. I find it hopeful because those things that I consider the bane of the human experience, I now know that, people have shared my thoughts and my worries forever. And I find it disturbing because we haven't made a hell of a lot of progress over all of those centuries. And we're still killing each other in wars, and we're still have a very great gap between the haves and the have-nots in the world and in each individual society in the world. I've got a poem here that speaks to that. And I'd like to read that because I found it very interesting to go back a little bit and to think about poetry in history, poetry in society, speaking of society, long before any of us were alive. And
the poem is in a book, so it's a published,
yes,
it's a published work.
I found this in Poetry Magazine.
All right.
And of course, this is a translation. This is written by Agathias in 6th century A.D. And it speaks of the preponderance of wealth versus poverty. A latrine in the suburbs of Smyrna. How quickly the pricey kickshaws of the rich and mighty get translated into a ditch of human excrescence. All those silver fish splayed on carolines of mullet roe relish, the guinea fowl larded with peacock's brain, the pan-fried coxcombs, sweetmeats of tamarind, whole pig's heads basted with siri flower brooms, pheasant eggs coddled in butterfat cream. In a right about of the alchemist's trick, their gold's new minted in the tender of shit, and all that edible gurry of wealth gets siphoned underground in rivers of filth. That's a rhyming form poem that speaks so succinctly to some of the very problems that we read about and talk about every day.
Yeah. What about the employer that has a lavish lifestyle but underpays his employees? I hope none of that happens in Missoula. I'm sure it doesn't, but
Yeah, right. Minimum wage.
But it comes to mind, we had dinner the other night out, and that's always a special privilege, and the little waitress was 5 months pregnant and no ring on her finger. And you just thought, here's a person that could really benefit. She's courageous enough to have the baby. She's going ahead and having the baby, evidently. And she is waiting tables, she's working, but when that baby comes, where's going to be the child care? And so those are issues we're asking at St. Francis Xavier. Is our parish interested in helping people? We are in a neighborhood where the children surrounding the area we're in here, the North Side neighborhood, 44% poverty rate among the children. And so Cheryl counters that poverty by riches of spirit. I think everybody at this table does that and is willing to do it, has done it in the past, has been beneficiaries. What's sort of important or interesting and neat is that probably none of us would be as successful as we have been as adults. Alice, I'm not going to take any credit, but Cheryl, Robert, John, Mary Ellen, if other people that have a little gray on the, or white on the rooftop wouldn't have gone to bat for us, we wouldn't be here. We probably wouldn't even be we wouldn't even be alive, probably. And I just remember my own growing up, you know. It was the Jewish community, I happen to be Catholic, but it was the Jewish Community Center in Omaha, or it was the Creighton University home camps. You can't forget those things, and those adults that they each come to mind, even as I speak. They make a tremendous impact. That's what makes the world go, that ability to pass culture on. John, you're thinking some deep thoughts, I don't know.
Oh, I was just thinking about some teachers that I had. My second grade teacher and a college teacher.
Yeah.
You know, I think everyone has certain people that.
And how they shared their spirits.
Yeah, and they.
But here
I think, you know, we have a school here that could be a school again, or like you say, a daycare center. It could serve
after school.
Serve a lot of functions to teach people various things, even if it's not formally a school.
Well, you know,
it did it before, so it's
there.
It's something that
there.
Has all the, whatever you call it, the karma, the energy
Yep,
of
the accoutrements.
teaching people.
The accoutrements,
the spirit, I guess.
Well, it's got 75 years of energy
in it, you know.
Yeah, I got to talk to the Mother Superior of the Order of the Sisters of Providence that operate St. Patrick's Hospital. And she, they know her as Kitsy Rutan. And she spent 3 years teaching here. She's now up in Montreal. I think it helped me to get in past the usual barricades by speaking French to the first couple lines of communication, and I got to speak to Sister Kitsy, and of course, being a call from Montana, she took it. She was a good sport. But yes, she taught 3 years in this building. I think the building is a monument, as it were, to the Jesuit fathers and the bricklayers and the Irish hod carriers and the Italian cement finishers that built the building. And it's a monument to the Providence sisters that taught there for so many years. And it's a great building. St. Pat's just moved out. There's nothing wrong with the building. Well, it's just getting it back into service.
You know, I would like to say, though, that even though this building is probably a really good thing to save, I'd hate this discussion of poetry to lose the fact that what I'm mostly concerned in is that the ability for children to express their thoughts, whether they're in an old building, a new building, or on a sidewalk, is what's important to me. I'd like to read a poem from a fourth grader, just to demonstrate what kids can be thinking about outside of their own realm. It's called Watch Out. Why is it that humanity rules when creatures were here first? Why is it that we people have a carnivorous thirst? Why is it that we kill animals, but if they kill us, they die? Why is it that we hunt them, but they still look us in the eye? How can they trust us when we've killed their mom? Why don't they plot against us, invent some killer bomb? Why does nature keep us when we hurt her so much? Seems we can destroy a life with one light touch. Seems we can destroy a life with one light touch. Creatures sit there baking while we slumber. Watch out, human race. Your days on earth are numbered.
How old?
Fourth grader. Fifth grader. Sorry, Sadie, I think you're a fifth grader. Wasn't a fourth, fifth class at Lowell School that I taught. And,
Profound.
you know,
Yes.
to me, that's
Yeah.
the concern. I want
Yeah.
these kids to continue to have a chance to say the things that are on their mind. And to me, it doesn't much matter where that is.
Well, what you have, as poets, I've just gotten the 1 minute sign, and I think that's a great note to sign off on. What you as poets and as teachers, all of you, have done is tapped into the deep spirits of children. And it's amazing. But under that fourth grader, Robert, is obviously an adult, just waiting to burst out.
We can't underestimate.
I'm in awe.
children,
I'm
please
truly in
don't.
awe, because I don't think I could have written what they, it's beautiful. And I'll say this, that, you know, we are the Xavier Foundation. This evening has been a poetry speak evening. We've had with us Alice, I'm Tom, we have Cheryl, we have Robert, we have John, we have Mary Ellen. We are very pleased to have been with you at this moment in time. Please come with us again. We will be doing this again next month. Watch your schedule with MCAT. We are meeting at this room on July 15th from 5:30 to 6:30, the City Council chambers. The subject will be poetry, literature, its effect on children, its effect on society. We thank you very much for being with us and being our viewing audience. And thank you, panel, very much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.